that make you really uncomfortable. Cringe-worthy uncomfortable. I hate the sound of fingernails screeching across the blackboard. And I really hate being dirty. I especially hate when my feet are covered in filth. So here I am on a rainy day in a remote Ugandan village. We're wading through shin-deep muddy water, and I'm afraid of the leeches and the parasites. My clothes are soaking wet, and I am so cold. At this point, my body's covered entirely in dirt. I'm fighting off a constant swirl of mosquitoes, and my precious feet are caked in mud. I am not comfortable. Where is my Prada bag? And where are those Louboutin shoes? It's now almost dusk, and we finally get to the fifth and last water source of the day. It's an unprotected spring. Putrid smells and even more mosquitoes greet us at this brown, murky, almost stagnant hole in the ground. But there's something else here. Beautiful women encircling the watering hole, and they're dressed in the most vibrant colors: blue, green, purple, orange. But there's one color that shines the brightest, and that's yellow. They each have a yellow jerry can, just like this, except theirs are worn and dirty from daily use. They take turns getting down on their knees to fill this can with their share of brown, murky water. This is the same water that they wash their dirty clothes in. It's the same water that the animals have pooped in. They will drink this water, and they will feed it to their children. And if this isn't bad enough, a herd of cows comes by, so we move to the side so they too can have their fill to survive. It's at this moment that I see one of the most striking images I have ever encountered. The reflection of these beautiful women and me looking back at me from the still water. These mothers were standing in solidarity, watching over and protecting their only water source, their main source of life. And as I looked at this reflection, I no longer saw dirty water. I saw shared humanity. I saw an intense will to survive. Because no matter who you are, or where you're from, or what you do, we all need water to live. It's one of those great, beautiful equalizers. And this dirty water was the only choice these mothers had for their family's survival. And as I looked deeper at this reflection, I saw myself even more clearly. And I was no longer feeling that extreme discomfort. What is a city girl who hates being dirty doing at this remote watering hole in Uganda? And how am I no longer uncomfortable? What brings me here? And what will take me to the remote mountains of Haiti and the winding rivers of Cambodia? I'm here because I made a bold choice to give up those Pradas and follow my purpose. I started Search for Water, an organization that works hand in hand with local leaders to provide safe water and sanitation to people in need. And it all started when I was just a few years ago, when I was just 7 years old. Being Indian, but born and raised in Dubai, we'd go back to the motherland every summer. And on one of these trips, we were in our comfortable air-conditioned car on the colorful, chaotic streets of Mumbai. And we were stuck in traffic. And this little girl around my age knocks on the glass window. She's covered in dirt, and her torn, tattered clothes barely cover her bare bottom. A little baby in equally tattered clothes is nestled in one of her arms, and her other arm, it's just missing. So here I am, in my prettiest pink dress, I've always liked dresses, looking into the eyes of a girl who could have just as easily been me. Except she's on the other side of this glass window, begging for survival. As our car moved away, her handprint was smeared on the glass and etched forever in my heart. Even as a 7-year-old, I knew that there was something wrong. But I did what children do. I returned home and I continued to live my relatively privileged life, where I had plenty of food, water, clothes, presents for every occasion, and sometimes for no occasion at all. I was a happy child, only truly remembering children less fortunate when we returned to India on those summer vacations. And then, as a junior in college, I signed up for a volunteer teaching assignment in the lush green foothills of the Indian Himalayas. And on this trip, we get this bucket of icy cold water once in 3 days that I would drag over to the shower stalls. Stalls that had the floors smeared in urine, and the stench of poop overshadowed the crisp mountain air. But I'd still relish washing layers of dust and dirt off my body. Because even this bucket of icy cold water was so much more than what my fellow villagers had. And that's how I experienced water shortages for the first time. A few more firsts happened on this trip. I started to understand the correlation between water access, poverty, and the resulting choices that people had. I'd often see my students, young children, off in the distant hills, fetching water for their family survival. They'd be trekking hours. Carrying 30 to 40 pounds of water is really heavy. So heavy that, I'm not making this up, that I can still barely lift it. This was not like the choices I had, but instead, the difference between life and death. And that's when it hit me, that even having a choice is a privilege in itself. And so, with this intense experience, a spark had been ignited. But instead of embracing it, I chose to do nothing. I came back to the US, graduated college, and joined corporate America. And very early on, I got sucked into the system. And I did what I was supposed to do. I let the motions happen day in and day out and completely forgot about that inner 7-year-old and that newfound spark. So for years, I would wake up early, check my email, drink some tea, put on my high heels, take a bus to the office, work really hard, run errands, come home and work some more. And of course, I had to balance all of this hard work with an adequate amount of partying. So there were plenty of fancy restaurants, bars, exotic trips, clothes, even more designer shoes and bags. I was winning business awards, jet-setting the world, and earning 6 figures at a really young age. My life was full, so full of meaningless minutiae. And that's when I realized I had to do something about it. I had to take control of the situation and no longer let life just happen to me. I decided to embrace that inner 7-year-old and that spark. And so I started to make a series of really uncomfortable and scary choices that led me to my purpose. I decided to walk away from my preconditioned American dream, an immigrant dream that my parents had worked so incredibly hard for, so that it was within my reach. And I had the privilege to just walk away. I chose to leave my secure, stable corporate job and exchange my fancy Chicago downtown apartment for a storage unit. I started to strip away non-essential shopping and all the staple luxuries that were once an essential part of my life, like gym memberships. The process, the process was really hard. I was no longer meeting the life and career expectations of my family and friends. And it started to get lonely. And I started to feel disconnected from some of the people who were once in my closest of circles. But through this conscious transition of choices, something really beautiful happened. I founded Surge for Water. I started to live my purpose. And today, nearly 400,000 people in 11 countries have access to safe water. A few weeks ago, I was in the Dominican Republic, and I met 7-year-old Diana Vasquez. She dreams of becoming a chef when she grows up. Now that her family has safe water in their homes, Diana can go to school, get an education, and do what all children should do, which is dream big. That's what water did for Diana and does for so many children around the world. And do you remember that dirty watering hole in Uganda that I told you about? Well, I'll never forget this moment. Almost a year later, when the 70-year-old village elder, Ivuku Moses, looked me in the eyes and thanked me for making him feel like a human being again. He used to be on his knees, drinking that same water as those cows and pigs. Now, not only does Ivuku have safe water, but he also has his dignity. People like Ivuku and Diana are what inspire me. And I'll tell you something, I'll never forget this other moment, because when Ivuku looked me in the eyes, not only did he inspire me, he also made me feel like a human being again. I would choose Ivuku's, Diana's, and my life 1,000,000 times over that Prada bag or those Louboutin shoes. When I started Surge, I chose to break away from the systems and the expectations that imprison me. I started to live a conscious, mindful life. And because of that, I now get to live purposefully and fully. I have exposure to beautiful villages on stunning mountains, across running streams, all across our beautiful world. I meet local heroes that inspire me to become a better person every day and to teach me about love, privilege, perseverance, and strength. So I ask you, what are some of the choices that you are faced with? Which side of the glass window are you on? Are you filling your can with mosquito-infested, brown, murky water? Or are you choosing between your morning mocha versus latte? Or perhaps your afternoon sandwich versus a salad? Do you have privilege in your choices? And if so, what do you do with that privilege? And let's take this even further. Are you living a life that the system has preconditioned you to live? Or are you living the life you really want to live? Are you using meaningless choices to distract from that one choice that really means something? What is that inner voice? What is that voice you can no longer ignore? What is that one choice that is so authentically you that will make you a slightly better and happier person? What is that one choice that could defy all reason but make the world just a slightly better place? I definitely don't have all the answers, and I still have a lot of life to live, stories to tell, and choices to make. I feel like my life's work has just begun. But what I do know is that when you embrace the uncomfortable and start making mindful, conscious choices, change becomes possible. And perhaps tomorrow, because of you, one more person will have the privilege to choose.